everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back today to do what we like to do best here on this channel, talk about Star Trek books. We have just finished up today, mere hours ago, book 2 of 7 in the Gateways saga, this one featuring the Challenger. What is the Challenger? Who is the crew of the Challenger? I had no idea going in. Which made this really a fun adventure, to be honest with you. And it made me really want to dive into that whole series of books as well. But today, we focus strictly on Diane Carey's Chainmail. And Chainmail, again, is part of the Gateways concept by John J. Ordover and Robert Greenberger. So from the cover here, and the cover, before we forget, written by, or the artist for the cover is Mr. Greg Bridges. And I do like these Gateways covers. They're pretty good. And it does give you a kind of a side look at the Challenger. I'll see if I can get you a little bit closer there. Too shiny. But as you can see, that saucer down there, that is the Challenger. And we'll talk more about that coming up here. From across the universe they come, bringing an ultimatum that could spell the end of New Earth. Star Trek Challengers, Gateways, book 2 of 7. So, from the back, Star Trek Challenger. Dangerous remnants of an extinct interstellar civilization, the Gateways connect the Alpha Quadrant with the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Hidden away in various corners of the universe, the ancient portals could be the future of space travel. But they may also provide an open doorway for an invasion from beyond. Gateways, Chainmail. 20 years ago in space near Belle Terre, a caravan of alien vessels disappeared into a gigantic gateway. Now the descendants of those aliens have returned, armed with incredible new weapons and abilities. Commander Nick Keller of the USS Challenger, already struggling to maintain peace in the troubled sector, must now cope with the fleet of hostile aliens, driven by their own fanatical agenda. Boom. Yeah, I mean, not really. That's not a very accurate back cover description. I don't know, let me see if I could do any better if I were to write it myself. I guess I don't know where they're expecting you to jump in and if they're expecting you to know. But I guess how I would describe this is on the frontier of explored space, right? The very farthest frontier of explored space. A Starfleet officer and his ragtag crew and their mismatched ragtag ship, basically, are forced to do what they can to protect planets, do what Starfleet does, and in the process, deal with these two species. This is not a good back cover. I'm just giving you the idea, right? But then, so you have that story, which is, I think basically that story was started in the New Earth series, all right? So the New Earth series then leads up into this. So I just kind of briefly versed myself on the wiki before I got on. I did not want to get spoiled too much about everything else that went on, but I guess I was kind of, surprised to know that, like, Challenger is like the end of the New Earth series. So definitely want to get into the New Earth series sometime and really want to read, I guess to do that, see the final book, I'm getting so off track. The final book of the New Earth series is basically book 1 of Challenger, which is referenced like a lot in this book. Kind of explains how they got themselves into the situation they're in, which to me is just a very, very, very cool situation, to be honest with you. So I really liked that. So anyway, you have this situation out on the frontier of space, right? But then you also have the Gateway. So you have these kind of two things colliding here. And of course, in book 1 of Gateways, you learn a little bit about like the culture that created these things. This book is like completely different, and now for something completely different. I love the little looks that the author Diane Carey gives you into this species. Well, these people basically, and you learn more about them as you kind of go on, that developed through this gateway, right? And throughout the book, basically, you have a couple chapters of Nick Keller and the crew of the Challenger doing what they need to do, and then you have, learning about the species, and then eventually they come together kind of in the middle, right? And she does a great job of, creating this very interesting and intriguing set of circumstances that these people had to develop under that made them exactly like the way they are. And just also increased the mystery of the gateways, And I will say one thing I did learn about this series today. They're all going to be cliffhangers. Every single one is going to be a cliffhanger. This is a cliffhanger. They're all going to end with the titular character going through the gateway, and then it's going to be like the end. And then I learned that Gateways Book 7 is basically each of these authors coming back and writing the end. And at first I was like, well, I don't know if I like that. And then I decided that I did like that. I like that a lot, actually. It's going to be interesting to read through 6 stories, each with a cliffhanger. 6 cliffhangers hanging out here over my head, and then I'm going to get the full boom, all at once coming at me. So I noticed, too, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I looked, and I checked my spreadsheet, and I looked again, and I looked at the hardcovers. I did not have 7. So I did order 7 today, and I ordered the hardcover, because I thought it would be nice to have kind of a bigger one for the big final finale of this wonderful saga. So, anyway, if you don't want to be spoiled about the story or anything, you can leave now, and leave knowing that I recommend you to read this book. And one of the reasons that I would say is because it is a Star Trek book, but you're getting a whole new kind of experience. And I suppose it's not new for you if you're familiar with the New Earth series and everything that happened throughout that. But for me, basically going from TNG, TOS, Voyager, DS9, and that's it, then I'm getting a whole new set of characters, and I love it. So you should read it. Now I'm going to rant about it a little bit, and I'm going to give away some things that happen. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you can go ahead and go away now. Anyway, we are in the Sagittarius star cluster, and I'm not sure how far away it is, but it is on the edge of Federation space. Basically, you have Belter, this planet that has been, settled by these Federation colonists or whatever. But then also in this area, you have these 2 species, the Blood and the Cobbled. And they are kind of, aggressive with each other. But it's kind of explained in the beginning that when they came in, the Federation, that they kind of smoothed things over. And that's the whole events of another book. So, we won't get too much into that and what happens there. But what happens here is the story picks up basically right in the middle, which is actually interesting. The first book in the series did that as well, where the crew of the Challenger is going to try to retrieve 2 of their shipmates. Their shipmates, the first officer, Shukorian, who is one of the Blood, and then Zane Bonifay. And oh my gosh, I love this. I cannot forget this. From the giant book about books here, Diane Carey gave some wonderful insight here as to the characters that I really like. And again, sometimes I wish I should read these things beforehand, but it's fine to come in afterwards too. But anyway, Nick Keller, who is the commander of the Challenger, is named after her grandfather, Nicodemus Jacob, and her childhood heroine, Helen Keller. If I were casting the role of Shukorian, it would be Adrian Paul. And get this, John Stamos would be playing Zane Bonifay. So I kind of like that I don't know, now whenever I picture this character, Zane Bonifay, I'm going to picture John Stamos. And I gotta tell you, I am not familiar with Adrian Paul. So I'm going to look him up now. Adrian Paul. And this guy is Shukorian. Who's this guy? He was, oh, okay, Adrian Paul. He was famous for being in the Highlander, the, the Highlander TV series. So that is, okay, so now I have a mental image of this Shukorian here as well. And the Challenger itself is a very interesting ship, and one of the many reasons why I really enjoyed this book. So anyway, here is the Challenger itself. Here. And as you can see, it is basically like a hodgepodge. So they came to New Earth or whatever, and then for whatever reason they had to disassemble their ships, maybe for colonization, and then they needed a ship to defend themselves, so they all joined together and built the Challenger. Built out of pieces of this ship, pieces of that ship, and that was one of the really fun things about this book, was that this ship, it's just so much different than your typical Starfleet ship. It's held together, just and I don't know, just a very, very interesting idea that they're all working on this kind of just barely held together thing. Well, not really. It's a very strong ship, and it holds up well too. And the thing is that it's so much more advanced than like the Blood and the Cold. This ship is able to kind of like police the sector, So again, it makes me really want to read the initial book where you learn, how everything came together. But here in this book, they are going to rescue their crewmates, Zane Bonifay and Shukorian, who are on a scout mission on a Blood Plume, which is, like basically a shuttlecraft, And they are examining this ship, and as they get close to it, this ship attacks them, and they have to, basically they have a choice. Like, Zane Bonifay wants to evacuate, Shukorian wants to try to save the ship, and he goes against orders. Bonifay evacuates, saves them both. I think he beams them both over to this mysterious ship, right? And that's kind of where the story starts, with Commander Keller and his crew searching through this ship. And a very strange ship it is. The interior, they can only beam into like one spot, and the whole interior of the ship is more like the interior of a cave, But nothing reads as rock or organic, everything reads as metal. And as they get further and further on into this, they notice that it's not just rocks and things, but there's actually all these statues around of people. And as they keep exploring, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these statues on this ship, right? So finally they get a message from, finally they find Shukorian. And he's okay, he's alive. And they finally get contact from Bonifay. And he is in a bit of trouble. And this was kind of a pretty gross part of it here. When they catch up with him, they find that he's kind of in the clutches of some sort of embalming machine or something, basically, right? And is pierced by multiple metal wires going through his legs, going through his body, and basically can't move. If he moves, they're gonna cut him. So that was pretty scary part, right? I can't imagine that. That's terrible. Tiny metal wires cutting through your body and all that. Ooh. So anyway, they're able to get him out of there. They're able to cut him free. And it's just kind of like the beginning of the whole trouble. Oh, also, when they're doing this, some of these statues actually start kind of animating and moving around to add to the whole creepiness factor of it. But they're able to get him back to the ship, when a whole nother series of problems takes off, alright? So, the Blood, which are one of these species here that live in this cluster, they have a very strict code of honor. And this Shukorian is we're going to have to arrest Bonifay now, because he disobeyed my order. And that's a big no-no. They can't do that. And basically, he's automatically sentenced to death. So you have this kind of moral dilemma that they're working through about Commander Keller, keeping his word with these people versus, not letting his man die, obviously. So, and Bonifay, again, played by John Stamos, is a very fun character, too. He's just very, outspoken, and knows so much, too. He's basically kind of the linchpin of the ship. He's one of the ones that knows where everything is, what to do, how to get it. So that is the drama that's going on board the Challenger as they're kind of examining this grave ship, right? Now, what's going on with the gateway? There's a gateway involved in here, right? This is a book about gateways. There they are. This was the other really cool part of the book. So, two things I really like. I love the Challenger, and I love this planet. Basically, they describe a group of people that has over time grown up on a planet basically nothing but metal. So they have learned over countless generations, thousands of years, how to survive on this planet by harvesting these kind of free-floating gaseous beings. They lure them down through this hunt, and then they harvest their bodies, their food, and their energy too, in an attempt to open up this gateway so that they can escape to where their predecessors did. So they give you these wonderful little chapters, meeting these people. Riatu and Lunti are like the two named ones, and going through their story of their crazy civilization that developed and survived and, you know, thrived basically on a ball of metal, you know. So I really like that part of it as well, seeing what they had to do, how they had to adapt to survive and all that. In the final hunt, there's basically the elders of the tribe get killed, and now it's down to Ryuta and Lunti to decide what to do, and she decides that it's time to power up the gateway and leave this place finally. So then you go back to the crew of the Challenger, and of course, there's also a little bit of something in this system called Gamma Night. And Gamma Night basically means kind of like you're kind of sensor blind during that time. So it just adds like a little bit of a dimension of drama to the story, because you can't go to warp in Gamma Night. But, so, one of the other fun things about this book, I would say, is that it's not your average Starfleet crew. And Commander Keller, throughout the book, kind of comes to realize that he has to get control. You know, he has too many people making decisions without consulting him. And that was the other thing that I really liked, is like throughout the book you can see him kind of, and then at the very end, take control of the situation, get people to finally follow his orders, and get things done, right? And it was just a very fantastic like kind of progression, I think, that they went through with that. So that was very well done. But the I guess the issue is a few issues actually. First off, the grave ship basically locks on to the Challenger and spears it with a giant javelin, which again I thought was a very interesting idea for space battle, because I've never seen anything like that. So basically they clamp onto the ship, and then from the grave ship, a giant javelin spears right through the Challenger. They're able to get themselves out of that situation. And this is also when the kind of the backup arrives for the Blood. And this is going back to Keller not having full control of his crew. See, the Shukorian basically called for backup from his own people instead of consulting his captain first, you know. So they have this whole issue of kind of this, you know, will they or won't they follow Keller's commands, or are they going to remain loyal to their people, the Blood? You know, if they're going to be on his ship, you know, they need to follow his commands. So there's a lot of fun stuff that happens with that as well. I love also that they go back and they give you a couple chapters of really kind of stretching out the exposition on the metal planet, and like how they developed and how they became what they were. And throughout the story they start kind of dropping these clues, like how one of the metal statues inside of the ship looks surprisingly like Shukorian. And then Shukorian tells a story about how 20 years ago his dad lured a called battle cruiser through the gateway and then the gateway closed and was never seen again. And then his people kind of forgot about the legend and only brought it back up when this gateway opened back up again, which is what happens. So this gateway opens back up, and all these ships come out. They call them spinners, and this is the ships of the the people that lived on the metal planet finally coming out into space. And another fun thing that I liked about this is the experience that they give you of these people coming out of this, I don't know, different dimension. And it's basically, in that dimension, there was no color, there was no smell, nothing like that. And everything was very plain. So now they're coming into like this whole different world, and they're experiencing color and all these things for the first time. And Diane Carey does a great job of describing all of that, and just how all of that plays out is just very well done. But basically, they come out and they see the conflict going on between the Blood, who have come for Zane Bonifay, since he betrayed orders, and the Challenger, because Keller's not going to give up his man that easy, right? And once they see this conflict, they end up trapping everybody. Well, first off, they come out and they join with the Grave Ship. The Grave Ship is their predecessor that came out before them, right? So they join up with that, and they kind of take command of the ship. And then they entrap all of the Blood ships and the Challenger in a big giant ball of chainmail. There you go. You got the title drop there finally. And this is also this is a very terrible, I guess, weapon for space. But they entrap the ship in a ball of chainmail. Keller initially tries to escape, and then when he's trying to push towards it, one of the Blood ship does the same, and in pushing towards it, pushes itself right through it, and basically shreds itself, dices itself, metal, everything and all. Warp core explodes. They're not getting out that way. So this is when Ryuta kind of tells the plan to Keller and everybody else that they are come out of the gateway, and now they're basically going to shut down space. They're going to go around to every single inhabited planet. They're going to wrap it up in a big old ball of this chainmail and make everybody stay home. No more space travel. Right? That's kind of crazy. But that's the plan, and they have the ability to do it as well with basically the amount of material they have through these different effigies that they've built up over time, and these people that have died and have been turned into these metal statues. I mean, I'm doing a poor job of describing everything that happens in this book, but I'm trying to hit the high points, right? So anyway, that's the idea. So now Keller has to find a way to solve the problem, all right? On his ship, he's already got problems because basically Shukorian and all of his Blood crew members have decided, we can no longer work for you while you're in this conflict with our people, which is kind of bogus, But in the end of the book, he convinces basically them, you're going to have to follow my lead or, get out of here, basically. Who turned out the lights? There we are. So you have this wonderful ending, too, where, as I said, I love it, where he takes command of the situation finally. So many things have happened that kind of have shown him to be like not where he should be as a commander. He takes command of the situation finally, does all the right things that he needs to do, and beams over to the Grave Ship, and then from there is able to take command of the situation. So just in a very well done couple of final chapters, and this time I was not to be tricked. I knew going into it was going to end in a cliffhanger. They're all going to be cliffhangers, but it was a fun cliffhanger, and they kind of solved the initial problem. They convinced this Ryuta that her plan was no good, and are now like moving towards a different goal. But now the issue is all the other people that are still on the other side of that gateway. They're getting ready to close that gateway, and Keller doesn't want them to do that. He wants to give them the chance to get out and escape into, real space and away from the metal planet. So that's how this book ends, with him in one of these spinner ships going through the gateway to try to convince these people to come on out. So, and there's also this amazing this time dilation that happens in there where, see, Shukorian's dad went in 20 years ago, but for whatever reason, that was actually 11,000 years that passed for these people there. So, I don't know. Think about that for a minute. What's going to happen in the follow-up here to Commander Keller? Anyway, I hope good things. I really enjoyed coming to know this crew, and I guess I was kind of sad to know that this is kind of the end of their adventure almost, really. I was hoping maybe this was like a middle or a beginning, but this is kind of moving in on the end of the whole New Earth series. But it makes me want to definitely get into that series, because it seems like just a very interesting... Yeah, I love the concept of being out on the frontier of known space and having to cannibalize what ships you have to build a ship to defend yourself. I don't know, very fun, very cool stuff. Gateways, book 2 of 7. 2 thumbs up. I liked it a lot. Very excited now. Book 3 of 7. That's the TNG book. That's my bread and butter. I love the TNG books. And it is also going to be part of clearing this whole shelf of books, having them all read. So, another piece to the puzzle is great. So, yeah, let's do it. As always, live long and prosper, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.